Hello, my kings, queens, and in between.
Editing Val here. Apparently, past me forgot to finish the intro. So, I am Valerie, and welcome to my channel, The Bookish Valkyrie.
So, today we are doing a TBR. I know I said already that I don't usually do a lot of like really structured TBRs. I do more of like a TBR pool to pull from, but I'm doing things a little bit different for September. First, let's talk about what I am reading currently. So, these two I have been reading since July. Mostly because I only have them in physical format, and I don't know if you have noticed, but my lovely hands are a little bit broken. And holding physical books is difficult for me. So, when I only have a book in the physical format, it takes me a while to get around to it. Originally, I thought that these books were going to be pretty easy for me to read because they're so light, but because of how tightly bound they are, I have a difficult time reading them, like holding them open for long periods of time. So I usually only manage a couple pages at a time with both this book and this book. But just to go over them really quick, so this is Triss's book in The Circle of Magic by Tamara Pierce. It is a middle grade fantasy following some unusually gifted children, and if you've never read anything by Tamara Pierce, I highly recommend it. Like, really literally anything. I would either start with the Circle of Magic series because it's in its own separate world, or if you want to start with her larger world, Tortal, I would start with the Song of the Lioness Quartet. But yeah, absolutely check them out, read them. And then You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight by Kaale Bayron. I really don't know if I'm saying that right, but if I'm not, please let me know in the comments. I what I've read of it, I'm really enjoying so far, but again, it's just difficult for me to hold. So, but I really want to try and get these read this week because I am trying to do some rereads for September, as many rereads as I can, and I'll get to that in a minute. I'm also reading currently The Vampires of El Norte, or Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. I really loved The Hacienda, and this one is definitely already got me in a good grip, and I'm having a good time with this one as well. This one I do have on audio, so it shouldn't be too difficult for me to get through that this week. And then also on my currently reading is Ascendance of a Bookworm. See, it's book 1, volume 2. And I have a hard time getting into slow moving fantasy, but I am determined to continue reading this light novel series. Hopefully that won't take too long. And then also, as I have mentioned before, I'm a chaotic reader, and I usually keep several books going at a time. So the final thing on my current reads list is Don't Mess with the X by DJ Jameson. I really am in the beginning of that one, so if I don't get to it this week, I may soft DNF it until October, or if I feel like I need something fluffy, I might pick that up sometime. So there are two reasons that I'm wanting to get a rush on getting all of my current reads caught up, and those are both for my September reading plans. One is a reading challenge, and the other one is more of a personal preference, personal reading challenge. Anyhow, basically, I tend to be more of a rereader, or like I usually keep myself at about a 50-50 ratio for rereads and new reads. But lately, I have noticed I've really gotten on the hype train, and I have been reading almost exclusively new to me reads. And a lot of those are fairly recent releases. So I'm wanting to kind of dial that back in because it really helps my anxiety to have familiar stories to sink into, and I really enjoy finding new facets to stories that I have never picked up on before or had forgotten about. And I really, really enjoy a reread. So September, I am going to try to get at least like 75% rereads, just to kind of get back into that groove. And then the reading challenge that I'm joining for September is Rachel at Shades of Orange is doing a Space Opera September reading challenge. There are 4 stages, and it's kind of like a choose your own adventure reading challenge. So at each stage, you have different categories or tropes or elements to pick from that you have to do in order to move on to the next stage. So I'm going to get into that TBR right now. So for stage 1, you get to choose your method of space travel, and the method I chose is wormhole UFOs. And you get to you need to read any 4 books, any format: novels, novellas, graphic novels, comics, audiobooks, whatever format. But 4 books to get through stage 1. And then, so I'm going with a reread of the first 4 books in the Martha Wells Murderbot Diaries. I'm so excited for the new book to be coming out, and it just is like my happy place when it comes to space opera and sci-fi. Murderbot is my happy place. So that's what I'm going to be reading for stage 1. And then for stage 2, you need to accept your mission. So the mission that I accepted is a top secret time travel mission. And you need to fulfill this one, you need to read a book from before 1980. And I'm going with Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Song. This was originally published in 1976, and it's one of my absolute favorites. It's probably the first sci-fi book that I ever read, back when I was, sci-fi fantasy too. It was my first dragon book, that's for sure. Oh wait, no, it's not. Jeremy Thatcher Dragon Hatcher was my first dragon book. But anyway, love this trilogy. I am going to be honest with you, I will probably read all 3 of them. So I might be a little bit of an overachiever on this one. But I mean, how do you start a trilogy and not finish it? So anyhow, I'm really excited to read the Harper Hall trilogy. And if you've never read them, it's like the perfect blend of sci-fi and fantasy, and it's, I want to say, middle grade to YA, probably more YA. I know I read it at middle grade ages originally, but some of the content makes me, and like the length makes you think, middle grade too, but it hints at some older content that makes me feel a little more YA, and the ages of the characters are a little more YA. And so anyhow, I will be reading those for stage 2. So for stage 3, your category is an unplanned event. And there were a couple of scenarios that caught my eye and I just couldn't decide. So, in keeping with the unplanned event feels, I think I will wait until stage 3 comes up and then pick my book. I do have plans for each eventuality. The first one is engine failure, and for that you need to read a space horror or space survival novel to fix the problem. And for that I want to read it's Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. It really caught my attention. It was something that I have seen on several of the booktube channels that I follow, and it was featured on my favorite horror podcast, Books in the Freezer, for their space horror episode. I think it was sometime last year. And it just really caught my attention. It's kind of a ghost ship / Titanic horror story in space. And that's really the only space horror that I have on my radar right now that I'm really interested in. If you happen to have any suggestions, feel free to leave those in the comments. And then the other scenario is a sort of diplomatic faux pas where you, just by walking in the room, you have insulted the most beautiful race in the universe. And in order to fix that problem, you need to do a little schmoozing and read a book with some romance in it. So for that, I have a couple of options. I was thinking probably Barbarian Mine, which this is a new to me book, but it is a series I am revisiting. I'm picking up where I left off. I've been picking them up in these covers as they've been coming out, and slowly making my way through them because they're just a fun bit of ridiculousness to fill in the gaps in my reading, and I really enjoy it. It's a good time. And then I did have a couple of others. Let's see, there was Deus Ex Mechanic by Ryan Fletcher. It is a sapphic space pirate romance. It's part of a series. I'm not sure if it follows the same couple throughout, or if it is like a bunch of standalones that are interconnected, but I'm definitely considering picking up the first book in that series. And then again, if you have any suggestions, feel free to put them in the comments. And then for stage 4, pick your epilogue. The only option really was Go Back Home, A Celebrated Hero, because it is reread a favorite space opera book, and this is probably next to Murderbot my favorite. This would be the favorite that Murderbot supplanted. I've been wanting to get back into the series where I left off. I had a hard time picking it up, so I want to reread to get that going again, and it fits with both this challenge and my reread personal challenge. Now, hopefully, I will be able to read all of those books and some more. So the other rereads that I have lined up as possible rereads are my first Gothic romance, which was Snowfire by Phyllis A. Whitney. I read it while I was still in elementary school. I borrowed it from my grandma, and it was a great time. I reread it several times when I was still in I think the last time I reread it was either junior high or high school. But I definitely want to revisit that, and I happen to have found a ebook copy of it. I do have my grandma's original copy, but it's very old and delicate at this point, and so I don't really want to reread it between my hands being terrible and its condition. The ebook is really the only way for me to go with that one. And then a traditional reread for me on a yearly basis is everything Sarah Addison Allen. There were some years where I got through everything she's ever written, and who knows, maybe that'll still happen this year. But I always go into the fall, verging on winter season with Sugar Queen, so that won't be happening in September. It's on hold for November, December, probably November. But I will definitely be reading some of her other stuff. My favorite Sarah Addison Allen book is The Peach Keepers. And that one is, they're all they're all magical realism. But The Peach Keepers focuses on two girls who were on opposite sides of the spectrum socially in high school together. But one of them has never left home, and one of them has just recently come back home. And they are finding themselves drawn together into an unlikely friendship, and things evolve from there. It's definitely my favorite. A close second being probably the Garden Spells First Frost duology. And so it's up between those three of what I'll probably read this coming month if I get around to some Sarah Addison Allen. Another reread that I am planning for September is a reread of the entire Mercyverse. I mean, obviously not for September, all of it in September, but starting in September. I want to reread the entirety of the Mercyverse by Patricia Briggs. So that is both the Mercy Thompson books and the Anna books, the Anna and Charles books, Alpha and Omega, the Alpha and Omega series. So if you go to Patricia Briggs, if you go to her website, she does have a chronological layout of where all of the stories fit between Mercy's stories and Anna's stories, and all of the short stories in between that you'll find in Shifting Shadows. So I will be doing that reread starting in September with my childhood best friend and new roommate, Weesey, or Shalise. I call her Weesey. Long story, that's her nickname. Anyhow, and I'm hoping that our friend Tony, who is my high school bestie, will be joining us with this reread as well. I'm very excited for that. Mercy is probably my favorite main character ever. Sorry, one of the infamous doggy interruptions. So, back to the possible rereads that I am looking at getting to in the near future. Hopefully September, maybe going on into the rest of the year. We'll see how long it takes me to get there. So we're going on to Red, White, and Royal Blue. I've read it a couple of times already. I really enjoy it. And with the movie having just come out, I watched it, and clearly now I need to reread the book. And then there are some more old favorites from like junior high, high school era. This is a sci-fi fantasy post-apocalyptic adventure, Summerland by L.D. James. I think it may be like the only thing that she's written, or that she published at least underneath that name. So she is, let's see, this was published in 1994. And it definitely left some lasting impressions on me. There is a enormous drought going on, so it's an eco apocalypse, and turns out that the reason that we're having such a dramatic drought in this reality is because a trickster god has been playing a game and stole all the world's water, and now you have to play his game to get it back. The main character is a young girl who is traveling out in the wastes of the United States, dressed as a boy for safety's sake, and she meets up with an old guy. There's cannibals and interdimensional travel and epic battles and mystical weapons and armor, and it's just a good time. So I'm hoping it holds up. We'll see. It's been a very, very long time since I read that. Now, this next one I know will hold up because I have recently read it in the last few years, and that is Sunshine by Robin McKinley. This is a vampire romance, heavy on the vampire, light on the romance, and vampires are not the sexy beasts that more recent versions would have you believe. They are rather vicious and a bit on the ugly side, and Sunshine is our main character. She is a grumpy baker, and she finds herself in a precarious situation where she has been kidnapped by a bunch of vampires and imprisoned with another vampire that they are trying to weaken by starving him and then forcing him to eat her. And I get a little fuzzy on the details because it has been a couple of years, but basically he doesn't want to eat her any more than she wants to be eaten. And so she uses some magic she didn't realize that she had and frees them both, and the adventure goes on from there. Now this one is definitely something I haven't read since my early 20s, so we're getting close to 2 decades since the last time I read this, and that is Christopher Stasheff's Her Majesty's Wizard. This is for anybody who loves like isekai manga or portal fantasy. Basically a language arts master's degree student is messing with this, trying to translate this ancient piece of paper that's not in a language that he can easily identify. And when he finally does, it turns out to be a spell that was designed to bring a powerful wizard across dimensions, realities. And it's a world where any sort of new magic is highly volatile and dangerous. But everything is kind of locked at a standstill, or at a place where if the good guys are going to have any chance to win, they need some new magic. They need some powerful magic. And so he uses the literature from our world, because it is old and established, as new spells in their world, and it's a great time. There are dragons and demons and princesses and knights, and it's definitely a classic fantasy, a classic epic fantasy, but it has a more modern sensibility to it. And then I'm also thinking about jumping back into Songsmith. It's a Witch World novel by Andre Norton and A.C. Crispin. Andre Norton was a fantastic fantasy writer who encouraged fanfic before fanfic was a thing, like to the point where she would actually write books with her fans. So I think that makes her a very singular part of the fantasy diaspora, or even just writing in general, authors in general. She's pretty unique and interesting, and I am a big fan. Now, I'm also wanting to read The Blue Sword by Robin McKinley. This is a YA where Sunshine was, or is a adult fantasy. Like, Sunshine is more of a urban fantasy, where this is more historical fantasy, like alternate world historical fantasy. There are some problems with this book, with kind of a bit of a white savior complex situation going on there. It was written before that was a discussion that was really being had on the wider social level. But it is a really great story that holds a big part of my heart. I think it's definitely something that should be discussed when you're discussing this book, but still worth reading. Some other books that I am interested in getting to, these ones I don't know that I will actually get to this month, but I have recently picked up some of the old Nancy Drew books, the original Nancy Drew books that I read. I know they're not the original Nancy Drews, but they're the original ones that I read. In 5th grade, I read them tucked just inside my desk, where I was not meant to be reading them, usually during history, sometimes during math. Not my favorite subjects. Well, no. Not my favorite subjects then. I love history now, but besides the point. I'm wanting to see how well they hold up. I'm guessing there's going to be lots of problematic things, a little bit of an ick situation with it being like 90s, 80s, 90s. I don't know. Let's see. Which is it? Oof. 80s. There will definitely be some gender issues, probably a little bit of race issues, at the very least lack of representation. But these were some of the first books to really get me into reading. I had a really hard time learning how to read in the first place, and my reading didn't really take off until later. Like, I kind of sort of was working my way into figuring out reading in 3rd and 4th grade, but it wasn't until 5th grade that my reading really just took off. And the Nancy Drew files were definitely a big part of that. And I just am interested in revisiting that and seeing how well or poorly it holds up. And speaking of things that don't quite hold up, one of my favorite trilogies from junior high was The Secret Circle by L.J. Smith. And I am wanting to give these a reread. They were a huge influence on me. I reread them so many times that I probably should have bought them from the library, but they never had them for sale. These are copies that I picked up later, and these are the covers that I grew up with. Terrible, ugly, awful. Love them though. Absolutely love them. And then also for LJ Smith, I have a favorite. Oh, let's see. Hang on. So I have another favorite trilogy, and that is The Forbidden Game. You never see anybody talk about these. You always hear about Vampire Diaries. Sometimes you hear about the Secret Circle. I'll be honest, I hated the Vampire Diaries books. I did get into the TV show, but it knew what it was. And if you've seen it, you know what it was. Not the greatest, but definitely addictive. But absolutely hated the books. I was a big fan of the her other series, the one that she never finished. The Night World series. And I do have those, and I may give those a reread, but right now they're not a higher priority for me. What I'm really wanting to get to is The Forbidden Game, because probably even more than Secret Circle, because I never actually finished this. I loved it, but I had to return it back to the library before I could finish it, and then I wasn't able to get it back out, at least not while I was still thinking about it. I'm not sure how many doggy interruptions that is, but there you go. One more. Anyhow, I never got around to rechecking it out. I did buy this when the bind-ups first came back out, and haven't gotten around to it. It's pretty floppy, even if it is kind of heavy for me, but that'll make it like an easy table read. If any of my arthritic girlies have suggestions on adaptive reading tools, please let me know. But I know I've considered looking into getting like those reading pillows to see if that would work for me, but I don't know. We'll see. I still feel like the only way I'm gonna really read that one in the physical is with it spread out on a table. Same with the Nancy Drew books, which is why I'm not positive I'm getting to those anytime soon, but they're in the pool, and maybe the fancy will strike me, maybe the opportunity to sit at a table and read will come up, instead of fitting it in and around different ways with my Audible or Chirp or ebook versions of things, which is how I usually read. Most of my books are either ebooks or some sort of audiobook. But yeah, anyhow, I also want to do a reread of War for the Oaks by Emma Bull. If you are a fairy girly, I would absolutely suggest this one. It is from the 80s. If you like the period shows that have been popular, like Stranger Things or Paper Girls, and you like fairies, this is a perfect mashup for you, because this is following Eddie, who is a rock singer, a bitter old rock singer, probably in the right age of her 30s, so younger than me, maybe even late 20s, I don't know. Back in the 80s, old was very subjective. Anyhow, it is a wonderful mashup of a human being drawn into fairy politics. Basically, she is a struggling rock star, rock singer. Anyhow, she's struggling. Her band is just broken up because the lead singer slash her ex, who she breaks up with at the very beginning of the book. They have a parting of ways, both between them and the band. And they had already had some people on their way out, so she's in the midst of trying to put together a new band when she is voluntold that she is going to be the mortal on the battlefield for the coming war between the local Seelie and Unseelie courts of the Fae. Basically, in order to make the stakes more real, because they are immortal, in order to make the stakes more real, they have to have mortal blood on the battlefield, which will make any deaths that happen on the battlefield permanent and real. It brings mortality to the immortal. And so you have a bunch of synth rock stuff going on. You have romance. There's actually kind of a triangle. You have a grumpy bodyguard, a shady knight, and a grumpy rocker in a love triangle. And it's one of the few love triangles that I didn't hate. Like, you have to do it exactly right or hit all the best beats or whatever, some sort of black magic to get me to like a love triangle. But War for the Oaks definitely manages that. And then all the Fae good stuff. And then another like old favorite, this one was probably also from I want to say this one was either 5th grade or 6th grade, and that was the Enchanted Forest Chronicles. I still have my original copies that I bought at a Scholastic school book fair, and they were just so captivating to me and so funny. And they had very modern ideas that you wouldn't have necessarily expected to have seen in the 90s. Or maybe that's me being judgy of older folks. I don't know. I'm judgy of the boomers. But it was very, very interesting. For instance, it actually, in the very first book, brings gender as a construct in kind of a backhanded way, because our main character is a princess who decides that because she doesn't want to be married off, she is going to go volunteer to be a dragon's princess. And then there is some political machinations with the dragons after she has become the princess of a higher ranking dragon. And it turns out that the way that the dragons are structured is, well, the way their royalty is structured is more of a trial. Like, you have to complete a challenge. you have to win a contest to become the next king, and so it's kind of a fated monarchy as opposed to a biological monarchy. And positions like king and queen are just job titles and have nothing to do with gender. So it doesn't matter if you're male or female, you can still be king or queen because they're very different jobs. And they don't have to be married. It's all very democratic and very interesting. Anyhow, it is a great adventure, and I am excited to revisit that series again. Well, that does it for my September reading plans. If you have any suggestions for my Stage 3 Space Opera September reading challenge, feel free to leave those in the comments if you haven't already. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and If you want to see more of my videos, hit the subscribe button. Have a great day.
Stars shining bright above me. Night breezes seem to whisper that sycamore tree. Dream a little dreamer.
That I'm in such a hurry to get my current reads all caught up. Kind of sorry, and I'm wanting to now. As for my little miss, no, little miss, get down. Thinking about it. You done?